I've always been a night owl. Working freelance means I keep odd hours, emails at midnight, editing projects at 1 a.m., and watching late-night TV long after the rest of the world has gone quiet. My apartment is small but cozy. Just me, a couch that's too soft, and a neighbor upstairs. Well, not anymore. The guy who used to live above me moved out 3 weeks ago. The landlord told me the unit was under renovation and wouldn't be occupied again until summer. That's what makes this story so hard to explain. It was around 2:10 a.m. I was half watching an old thriller on TV while scrolling through my phone. Everything was quiet, just the occasional hum of the fridge and the soft light of the screen. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A light flickered. Not in my apartment, above me. The ceiling pulsed briefly with soft flashes, like someone flipping a switch on and off. I paused the show and stared at it. Another flicker, then again. It was coming from the bedroom above mine, the one I knew was supposed to be empty. I turned the TV volume down and listened. At first, nothing. Then, thump, thump, thump. Slow, deliberate footsteps above me, heavy ones crossing the floor. I sat frozen, eyes glued to the ceiling. They paced back and forth for what felt like minutes, then stopped, and everything went dead silent again. Now look, I'm not someone who jumps to conclusions. Maybe someone was working late doing repairs, but at 2 in the morning, without a single tool sound, no radio, no voices, still I let it go. Told myself I was just tired and hearing things. Until the next night. Same time, same flickering, and the same slow, dragging footsteps above. Only this time, it sounded like they stopped directly over my bed. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, holding my phone like it was some kind of weapon. Every creak made my skin crawl. At sunrise, I called the building manager, told him everything. He sounded confused, but agreed to meet me that afternoon to check the upstairs unit. When we went up there, the moment the manager opened the door, we were both hit with that old, dry dust smell, the kind of air that hasn't been disturbed in a while. The floors were still covered in a fine layer of dust and renovation debris. But in the middle of the room, right above where my bed would be, we saw them. Footprints. Clear, defined shoe prints in the dust. Not boot prints like a contractor would leave. Regular sneakers like someone just wandered in, stood still for a while, then walked to the far wall and disappeared. No one had a key. No workers had been in for over a week. There was no sign of forced entry. The windows were locked from the inside. The manager looked at me and quietly said, "We'll change the locks. Today." That night, for the first time in days, I slept with the TV off. The footsteps haven't returned. The light never flickered again, but sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night. And before I even open my eyes, I find myself listening to the silence above me. Because now I know, just because a place is empty doesn't mean it's unoccupied. It happened on a Wednesday night. I wasn't doing anything unusual, just working late at my desk with a cup of tea and some background music. I lose track of time easily when I'm focused, and before I knew it, it was well past 3 a.m. That's when my phone lit up with a notification. 1 missed call, unknown number timestamp, 3:17 a.m. I frowned. No voicemail, no text. Just the eerie silence of the apartment and a lingering unease I couldn't explain. Out of habit, I checked my voicemail anyway, just in case. There was one new message. I pressed play. No voice, just breathing. At first it was faint, then louder, deep, steady breaths, like someone was close to the microphone, then a whisper, barely audible, almost lost in the static. "Alex!" It didn't sound angry or desperate, just flat, empty. I hung up, heart pounding. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a prank, a wrong number, some scammer using voice AI garbage. But how would a scammer know my name? I tried calling the number back. It didn't ring, just a robotic voice. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. That's when the fear really kicked in. My lights were all off except for the one at my desk. I suddenly felt watched, like there was someone right outside my window, even though I live on the 3rd floor. I closed my laptop and sat still for a while, listening. Nothing. Not even a car passing by. The next morning, after barely sleeping, I decided to report the call, just to be safe. The officer I spoke to took it seriously, more than I expected. He asked for the timestamp, what the voice said, and what number it came from. I gave him everything. Then he asked something that made my blood run cold. "Were you alone last night?" I said yes. He nodded, then said, "Because at 3:30 this morning, someone used your name and address to report you as missing." Turns out they'd received a 911 call just minutes after I missed that strange call. The voice gave my name, location, and said I hadn't been seen in days. The call was short, vague, and ended before dispatch could ask follow-up questions. They traced the number. It was from a burner phone found in a nearby trash bin later that day. The police checked my apartment just in case. Everything was fine. No signs of a break-in, no cameras, no tampering, no indication of how someone knew so much. They never figured out who made the call. But after that night, I installed a new lock, got security cams, and changed my number. Sometimes I still wake up around 3:17 a.m. And when I do, I make sure my phone is face down. Because if I ever see another missed call from a number I don't recognize, I won't answer. Live in a small off-campus apartment. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place on the 2nd floor. It's quiet, old, and honestly kind of charming, except at night. Everything creaks, the radiator hisses, and sometimes I hear things I can't explain. But one night, it wasn't the creaking that woke me up. It was silence. You'd be surprised how loud a quiet room can feel when you're used to the noise. I opened my eyes and sat up in bed. The apartment was pitch black, and the air felt heavier than usual, like I was being watched. That's when I heard it, the sound of a window sliding open. I froze. My bedroom window was shut. I checked it before bed, and I live alone. I sat in silence for a moment, straining to hear more. Then, a soft thump, like something stepping down onto the floor. I slowly reached for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and got out of bed. The sound hadn't come from my room. It came from the kitchen. I crept toward the doorway, heart pounding, every floorboard under my feet threatening to betray me. I peeked into the kitchen, and there it was. My kitchen window was wide open. The screen had been pushed in. Cold air poured through, and sitting on the tile below the window were muddy footprints. Here's the strange part. The prints didn't lead in from outside. They started in the kitchen, right below the window, and led toward the door. That's when it hit me. Whoever, or whatever it was, wasn't breaking in. They had been inside, and they were leaving. I backed out of the kitchen and locked myself in the bathroom, heart racing. I called 911 and whispered everything I saw. The dispatcher stayed calm and told me to stay quiet and keep the door locked until officers arrived. It felt like forever, but the knock finally came. "Police!" They searched the whole place. No one was there, but the prints were real. They found partial glove marks on the inside of the kitchen window and faint scuff marks on the floor, like someone had stood there for a while, watching. There were no signs of forced entry on any other door or window, meaning someone must have gotten in earlier that day, when I was out. They waited, and at some point during the night they decided to leave. I installed cameras the next day. New locks, motion sensors. I haven't had an incident since, but I never go to bed without double-checking every single window now. because the scariest part of that night wasn't that someone could have gotten in. It was knowing they already had.